about chiropractic care. What excites you most when your patients or practice members report changes to you? What's your highest level outcome you can want for someone? These are things that I considered on my process developing reorganizational healing and network spinal analysis. Most people report that what excites them most is a person making a constructive choice. I finally stopped smoking. I was in an abusive relationship and I set a stand, or I left the relationship, but we decided to go for counseling. Or perhaps I've always hated my mother or had issues, I'm more loving to her. A story can be a simple thing that somebody take care of someone, they stop violent behavior, or they finally was able to live their dream. Now, many people will say, well, how does that relate to chiropractic? Well, it has to do with healing. It has to do with a person living a more energy efficient life, having more available energy to organize all the informational systems of the body, and especially the nervous system. This is really what it's about. So I'm asking those questions because reorganizational healing seeks to bring a person to a higher order as compared to restorative therapeutics, which seeks to make them comfortable so they continue the way they were before the symptom or before the condition arose. Which again restores them to the set of conditions that set the stage for the challenge in the first place. So we're going to be speaking about reorganizational healing and network spinal analysis care. So really, what is NSA? NSA is an approach in chiropractic that's an evidence-based approach. It's evidence approach to wellness, to body awareness, and obviously to spinal change. Very specific, gentle spinal entrainments, network adjustments, at specific areas called spinal gateways, which happen to be in the vicinity of the vertebral meningeal relationships, where the spinal cord anchors into the vertebral column. Those contacts activate some process by which it cues the nervous system, the spine, and higher brain to create new wellness promoting and strategies that reorganize the system, the sensory motor system, the spine. It's important to realize the spine not only helps coordinate body function, it's also a major modulator of emotion. The spine also, through the sensory motor strategies of the spine and the postural elements, also are associated with your sense of self. Your sense of self is anchored in, and persistent thoughts are anchored in through sensory motor strategies of the spine and through different postural aspects. The spine also can actually help modulate as it gets improvement in its function beyond the level of just where it starts increasing its level, actually can send cues to the brain that allows it to actually make healthier choices in behavior. And ultimately, the spine is actually an organ of a spiritual experience and spiritual change, as has been demonstrated for thousands of years through different traditions. In network care, two unique healing waves develop. And these healing waves are a respiratory wave, which generally tends to produce a greater stability, which means a person can be where they're at and have greater depth of it in a healthy way. And the network wave, or the somatopsychic wave, which produces a temporary reorganizational instability. As the wave goes through, it suspends those sensory motor challenges or anchors or connections to things that are just not you. Basically, it's a wave that's integral to each individual, that's unique for each individual, and as it moves through the body, as it moves through the spine, not only does it collect energy that's been bound up as tension, as distortion and subluxation, and as defensive physiology, it also helps the system to reorganize in a new way consistent with this information. And network waves are associated with self-regulation of the mechanical tension in the body, the defensive strategies, sensory motor strategies, the bound energy, and it takes energy that's been locked up in the body and utilizes that as fuel or as an energy source to do work. And what is the work? Healing the spine, healing the body, and helping them improve how they heal their life. So the NSA practitioners combine their clinical assessments of increased spinal sensory motor acuity and energy efficiency with the patient or practice member's self-assessment of their own wellness and life changes. So there's a couple of things happening. There's the practitioner refining and coordinating the spinal changes that are occurring at higher levels of efficiency or effectiveness. And that's paralleling the actual type of conversation a person's having about their health or well-being. There's a greater self-awareness and conscious awakening of the relationships between the body, the emotions, the energy flow, the mind, and even the expression of the human spirit through this particular work in NSA in a reorganizational healing way. I mentioned at times somato-respiratory integration, and SRI really developed as a tool to advance people in 12 stages of healing. And I realized that people in network care in the 1990s, early 90s, I was noticing that people had different healing responses. And people sometimes experience suffering. Sometimes they experience a charge or polarity. At times they felt stuck. At times they said enough of this, they claimed their power. At other times people just merged past stories that were holding them back, they thought were real, or expectations of themselves that they thought were real, and spontaneously said, this does not apply to me. This rule about my life is not real anymore. And other people then got to a point they're going to do whatever it takes. They're going to change their diet, they're going to exercise. They know something's bigger is calling them, and they have to prepare for it. Another stage in healing, people finally come to resolution with the energy to where it's been, and now they no longer have a hunger to have to defend themselves or be someone to defend. And there's spiritual changes. And this happens with people in a healing journey. And they were accelerated in network care. And I developed exercises called somato-respiratory integration exercise to parallel those stages of healing. And those stages of healing occur in network care. And I noticed them at people at transformational gates where people would come and to further advance the care. And now they come to advance the healing strategies and the spinal strategies. And we see that people express each of these states of consciousness. And they all have ways of breathing, moving their body, moving the energy. I mention this because network in itself, even if a practitioner doesn't apply any SRI exercises, it is a form of care that produces an SRI outcome because the person develops a connection to the body rhythm, to their innate wisdom, to how they use their focus attention, how the way they use their breath and movement, and how it all impacts upon the way they experience their body. Years ago, I realized that different postural states were associated with different emotional states. And I, as a student of art history in college, I could tell looking at a painting or a sculpture whether the person was angry, whether they were sad, what their type backstory. And by the way, a person, every healing situation, every crisis, and every drama in life has a backstory. And the backstory is associated with what's in the back of your mind. The spine is the back of your mind. Now, the shape, position, tension, and tone of your spine is in relationship to shape, position, tension, and tone in your life. As an art student, I would know, identify whether a person just had their lover come over or the lover didn't show up, or what happened, because our body represents the way we experience our life. It's the temple or the outward clothes that we wear for what the inner experience is, and the sensory motor strategies of the spine coordinate who you are, your identity, your sense of self. So as this position of the spine, the tension, the tone of it shifts, so shifts the shape, position, tension, tone in your life, and vice versa. In 1997, I met with Professor Edmund Jonker, professor of mathematics and engineering at University of Southern California. Brilliant researcher and professor. He watched people in the wave, and he said, this is scientific because it's reproducible, consistent, and predictable. So, I said to him, we know it works in reality. We'll work in theory. And we chuckled at that. He says, well, I'm going to develop a theory by observing actually what's happening with the wave that happens in network. And since the wave is a fundamental factor research shows in advancing people's quality of life change and making constructive choices in life, it's important that we really understand what's going on. And at that time, there was just the beginning of levels of care developing, and each level of care developed based upon previous research of patients' outcomes, and we'll talk about that soon. So he put surface electromyographic electrodes along the spine. We actually had the equipment modified so it would eliminate the filtering effect. What do I mean by that? Well, when you have a surface EMG, when you have the EKG, when you have most of the equipment, it has filter that takes out potential noise. If you do a research experiment, you get a research data of 0.2, another times 0.4, another 0.375, then you get 1, you get 2, then you get 0.03. They all cluster within a certain range. If you get 4 million or 0.0006, you're going to basically throw the data out as probably being an artifact. Well, these are the type of things this equipment does. They have filters that select for that. Only thing is, what nonlinear mathematics, which is really dynamical systems or chaos theory really is based upon, really says when a system departs from its usual path, that's in that point, that's when it's open to the most change, and the most change can occur. So, for example, you sign up for a network seminar. That one little event could change your life tremendously. You talk to someone and tell someone about the impact of spinal care in their life. That one thing they do could make a nonlinear effect and produce a large outcome for them. So, in the research, they found out that the wave is nonlinear. There are two systems, a linear system and a nonlinear system. A linear system means that if you change the initial conditions of the system, make a small modulation, then there'll be a small modulation outcome. A nonlinear system means a large input to the system make a small change, and a small input may result in a large change. Living systems function in a nonlinear way. People use a linear perspective in healthcare. So if a person has a small problem, it's okay to have chiropractic care or take a herb or a supplement for it. But if you do that with someone, you may get in legal trouble with your children if they have a serious disease and they don't take potentially very dangerous medication or treatment. The same way it would be irrational to give radiation therapy or serious chemotherapy to someone who has a simple fungal infection or something of this nature. Well, people question, well, how could such a small input to the spine create such a big change? Because that's what does create change. If we take a whole bunch of dominoes and line them up on a table and have them haphazardly applied, you have to take a large force of many times to knock them all down. If they're all organized by some intelligence which takes energy to do it a certain way, you touch one domino, they all actually start go down instantly and effortlessly because they use the energy within the system to create the change rather than a large outside force. Living systems occur that way. And with a small amount of force put into the system at the right time, the energy inherent within the system can be used to create the change.